Back, everybody. I have in studio a very distinguished member of our community and a very good friend of us here at KUAM News, Joshua Tenorio. Josh, Hafaday, welcome back.
Hey, Hafaday.
Very good to have you here. And you serve the community in yet another capacity. You are the training director for ESGR, and we are smack dab in the middle of ESGR week.
Right. I've been a volunteer with ESGR for, I think, almost 6 years.
Mm-hmm. Very fulfilling work. So for people that aren't familiar with the organization, get us up to speed on what exactly it does.
ESGR stands for Employer Support for the Guard and Reserve, and our committee, which represents Guam and the Northern Mariana Islands, exists to try and foster an environment in which employers support the military service of their employees. And so we take a look at initiatives. We recognize employers who are very supportive, and in years past, we've been focusing on the high unemployment levels of guardsmen and reservists. All of this really is to try and support the notion that our country survives on a volunteer military. It's not surviving on a draft where compulsory military service is required. And in order for us to maintain that posture, we have to have an environment in which the country is supported by men and women who voluntarily join the armed forces after they're qualified, and those that will be citizen soldiers or service members that will continue to work in our community and be called out periodically to support our freedom.
Now, one thing that I found interesting and maybe circuitous karma is certainly ESGR week was planned in advance of the geopolitical factors that are now happening and everything. So does the situation in the world right now with the North Korea situation, does that kind of like galvanize the mission and remind your organization to remind employers in the private sector of why it's so important that, we give our guardsmen and guardswomen, time to serve and time to do their duty and to train?
Absolutely. I think that there are about 3,500 to 4,000 guardsmen and reservists that live on Guam. They work on Guam. They train on Guam, and they're the first ones that will be able to defend us. And so having this threat, it was very sobering. Obviously, everybody hopes for peace, and fortunately, cooler heads did prevail this week. But we're always reminded that there are threats in our region, and giving the support to your service members is quite important in the total scheme of things. So I think that for me, I first got on when I was administrator of the court, and I had about 40 employees that were in the service. And I also see the benefits that having these men and women who are trained professionally in things that the court weren't able to prepare for or to train for. And I think it really adds different dimensions to employers. And I think it's wonderful.
Now, what's some of the feedback you get primarily from the private sector? Because, we here at KUAM are a private business. And although we wholeheartedly support, the volunteer effort, as you said, for, men and women that want to serve our nation, at the same time, most businesses would say, we still got a bottom line to meet. We've got, commitments and obligations to make and to fulfill. And we just want to make sure that we won't lose productivity. I'm sure that's a common theme that's brought up to you. So how do you address
it? It is, and so we encourage communication with the commands. Your service member is going to, do their monthly drill usually, and then there's about 20 days, in which they'll go on annual training. But sometimes, other training can be synchronized. There might be opportunities for service members to go at different times in the year. And so sometimes it's the commanding officer's viewpoint that they want to be as supportive to the employer as well. But, however, and this has been the case in the last few years where many of our service members have been called for involuntary service. The deployment of the 600 to Afghanistan in the last few years, those are to support our country's total effort. And so what we do is we try and educate and prepare the employee and the employer about what the rights and protections are that the service members are entitled to under USERRA, which is federal law that protects their right to return to their workplaces and to their jobs. So part of it, I think, is dialogue, but I think that although there will be periodic times where your business or your agency might be adversely affected, on the whole, I think it's a small price to pay for the general freedoms that we enjoy. And I think that's the reason why we exist.
Because each and every one of those Guamanians, of course, took the oath to defend our nation against all enemies, foreign and domestic. It's said over and over again, but it's far from cliche. That is what they do.
Right, and I think just to remember that during the Vietnam time, it was involuntary. It was a draft. My father was drafted. I think your father was in the military.
My father was in ROTC.
At the time.
Yeah, many of my uncles.
That's right. We're drafted. We lost many people. And it wasn't by choice. Here, we have a balance where people that want to enlist and join the military as a career are there, along with those that want to stay as members of their community, but are willing to go when the time is needed for them to go and defend our freedom. And that balance is what enables us to maintain a voluntary military.
Right, and not have to worry about, okay, when I come back from doing my duty, am I going to lose my seat or my spot?
Right,
okay, so real quick, what types of activities went on this week? And next week is actually the National ESGR Week.
So this week, both in Guam and in Saipan, the governors issued proclamations. The legislatures also recognized our state committee for the work that we do. But the remaining balance of the week will be having a boss lift. A boss lift is when we expose employers to the kind of military training and facilities that their service members are assigned to when they're not. When they're assigned to military service.
And that's a lot of fun.
Right, and then we'll also have a lunch with BOSS, which will give us an opportunity to brief existing or new employers about the USERRA law and the privileges and advantages of employing service members in their organization. So that's how we're going to finish. Next week, we'll take a look to what's happening on the national level and take part in that with our counterpart committees in all the other states and territories.
All right, Josh, well done. Good to see you as always.
Thank you.
And you've told me this many times in your role at ESGR. Basically, succinctly stated, when people wonder about the duty they have to let their employees perform, we can't do our jobs as companies if they can't do their jobs as soldiers.
That's right.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason.
All right. Come back anytime.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Please stay tuned, everybody. You come back right after this.